competitive advantages become competitive requirements. We have teams that have identified conference players of the year using our data, agencies that have found players first using our data, really large institutions that indicate the data has made their models more predictive than they've ever been.
All right, we are back for another episode of Under the Number. Today, we're in person here in Dallas, Texas, and I'm sitting down with Ryan Girardot, the co-founder and CEO of Cerebro Sports. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on.
Brent, I'm psyched to be here.
Thanks for setting it up. I mean, you got to give us a little bit of context on why we're sitting in this amazing indoor basketball court.
Well, I saw it myself for the first time yesterday, but it is beautiful. This is one of our larger investors, a guy named Tim. Big basketball guy, big basketball family. He built this gym, I think, originally for his sons, but doubles as a great podcast studio, I guess.
I mean, it could not be a better fit for what we're about to talk about. Tell me about Cerebro. What is Cerebro Sports?
Yeah, Cerebro is basketball's largest player stats database, specifically verified player stats database. Crazy stat a lot of people don't know is that over the last 15 years, almost 2/3 of the Americans that get drafted into the NBA were not considered top 100 high school prospects. And there's a ton of downstream effects of that. Normally, this means at the collegiate level, matches aren't quite where they should be. And so our thesis has been, much like NBA teams have used standard college box scores to build projection models ahead of the NBA draft, there's a way to tell how good these players are earlier, to look more longitudinally across their entire careers. And so long as the data is of high quality, that can actually affect real decisions, whether that is evaluating how good a player is, how good they are going to be, perhaps like a translation to a specific league, or ultimately what that's worth, right? So we think it affects every stakeholder. It's kind of this foundational data set of just truly useful, believable identity, basic biographical data, and then box score on court statistical data.
So you said as long as the data is quality, that makes me think as someone who grew up playing sports in the world of huddle and different cameras and self-reported max preps data and coaches, with a pen and paper taking individual stats. How do you solve for that?
It's a really hard problem. It probably is the biggest reason why nobody's gone after this. I think on the one hand, it's normally eye-opening to find out how the difficult it is to go evaluate all of these kids. But maybe there's a slight misevaluation on how valuable the data is. However, it's also really hard to get, and like what makes it worth actually doing all of that. In order for us to do it, we have to go down to the ground level. We have to go partner directly with the event organizers, make sure that we're sourcing what we call good ingredients. So this would be good game film. A lot of times we're doing these stats by way of video. Good rosters. That's even difficult to get in the grassroots and high school space. As long as we can get that, some level of ground truth, who is wearing what number, and game film that we can actually watch, we can turn around a box score that is trustworthy. We're an aggregator first, so every box score that exists out there from an approved source, we vet it, tie it to these career identifiers, and we go fill in a lot of the gaps by way of partnering with these event organizers directly.
We're sitting here in one of your investors' homes, right?
Yes.
Another investor of yours is Mark Cuban.
It is. This is not his home.
This is not his home. Yeah, for the record, we're not at Cuban's house. He must see more basketball-related sports tech data plays than maybe anyone in the country.
I would imagine.
How did you break through to get him on your cap table? What resonated?
Well, most people that know me know I was a ball boy for the Mavericks when I was growing up. And the first assumption is, oh, wow, you finally broke through with Mark after, I was like, I probably wrapped up being a ball boy maybe like 13 years before he ended up investing. And no, it has absolutely nothing to do with that at all. We actually sent him a cold email the night after the NBA draft. I want to say it's probably 2022. We send him a cold email and we say, hey, Mark, we had access to data that we can guarantee your front office did not have access to when you drafted Jaden Hardy last night. He says, prove it. We send along a box score. He forwards it through the front office. Sure enough, they did not have access to that. I know that because I score kept that game personally when Jaden was in high school. But Mark didn't know that we weren't ready for scale yet. And so, it worked out Worked out great. Mark was like, "Wow, it's really impressive. You've created a new way to capture that type of data." And I think he saw the value in longitudinal data early. He's been a big believer of ours, invested more than once. Been a fantastic public advocate of ours as well, door opener. And it's been great ever since.
What are some of the most consistently overlooked qualities or maybe shortcomings of a player that end up being the perception of a coach or a scout who is not data driven? What is something that you see most frequently where you're like, hang on,
Yeah.
the data is telling you a very different story than your eyeballs are?
Well, usually it's going to be stuff that doesn't pop off of, I was going to say a page, but let's say doesn't pop off the court, right? Like when you're sitting there watching a player, it's and you got to imagine too, if you're evaluating millions of kids across the United States, your windows to evaluate, especially if it's the cursory evaluation, it's you don't have a ton of time until you're deciding, hey, I'm going to shortlist this guy, I'm going to double click, I'm going to triple click, I'm going to go watch this guy a lot, right? So what doesn't pop off the court in a short form setting, it's going to be stuff like high efficiency in terms of scoring. Sometimes it's unsexy stuff like offensive rebounding. Just the simple things, not turning the ball over. But longitudinal data does a great job of helping you to see that pattern over a long period of time. So. We work with a lot of college coaches. A lot of times they'll be attending these events that have 8 courts, 20 courts. And, you might be in the right gym, but on the wrong court at the wrong time. You're following a prospect that you think is a fit. I mean, all these other coaches are there, but that's exactly the point. All these other coaches are there. Where in this gym should you be? Is it that backcourt? Is John Morant playing on that backcourt? Sometimes the answer is yes. And then even once you get there, if with our tool, you've got the ability while you're sitting courtside actually scouting a guy. Say somebody pops off for 3 3-pointers in the first half, you want to say, who is that? I've never heard of him. Well, is that anomalous? Is that the exception or is that the rule? You can actually find that out again in real time and decide whether we're all about helping you decide whether to shortlist a guy more so than make a final decision. You'll always have to continue to evaluate them as you always have. But again, getting the straightest read you can on what that player's career has looked like is really where we specialize.
It is pretty amazing that in this day and age, there's still so many athletes getting overlooked in the recruiting world. Do you have any instances where maybe the data has uncovered someone who otherwise was flying way under the radar?
Yes, absolutely. I always say, these are kind of like first of a million examples because just statistically speaking, there's going to be a lot of these.
Yeah.
To your point, there are a lot that fly under the radar. A lot of times too, in fairness, they're overlooked for a specific reason. Sometimes they did get a first look, they weren't great on that first look. Sometimes there are things holding them back. Sometimes there's off the court stuff. Again, we don't actually get into answering all of those questions for you, but there absolutely are examples of guys that belonged on short lists, weren't on there. I think we can look back at a player that comes to mind for me is JT Toppin, who unfortunately going to this year's March Madness had torn his ACL, I believe, but he's currently at Texas Tech, and he originally ended up recruited to New Mexico. And he was fantastic there, but in order for him to actually make that move to a power conference, that had to be something that could be sold and understood across the organizations that were recruiting him. And I think one big issue that any teams that were looking at him would run into is, hey, he was great this one year at a smaller conference. How is that going to translate? And is there a reason to believe in this? Because he was not a consensus top 100 or top 150 kid. But when you have a dozen high school events, what we're able to help you do is kind of project what trend looks like, right? So was he on paper one of the 100 best kids in the country at that time? That's an example of what an overlook looks like. Now, what we want to do is help not only make these decisions easier and more confident in a transfer capacity, but ideally, let's help water find its level earlier. That's good for coaching staffs. That is good for players themselves. And our view is if we can serve those end users better, we're doing our job well.
It sounds to me like a lot of what you're trying to do is augment the process with the objective side of the
100%.
house. It doesn't mean that there's no feel or touch associated with scouting anymore, right? It's
Absolutely not.
augmentation, not replacement. Like
Yeah.
whenever I talk to people doing this type of player evaluation and kind of future data-driven player development type stuff, you can't help but think of Moneyball
Yeah.
and the classic
Yeah.
scene where the
Yeah.
old school scouts are all sitting around the table talking about how, you know, one of their inputs is that the guy's got an ugly girlfriend. And
Yeah. No, exactly. It's true.
is that the right interpretation, I guess, number one? And two, if so, does that resonate with these kind of probably more old school guys where you're saying, hey, I'm just trying to make sure that what is objective is delivered to you in a
Yeah.
way that helps
Yeah.
your process as
Yeah.
an input,
Yeah.
not trying to replace you.
Yeah. So what's happened in basketball is it's kind of turned into this naked eye versus the numbers.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I get it. Having met folks on both sides, I understand where that prerogative is coming from. A lot of times, the naked eye, these are going to be former players. People have earned their stripes. They know what a quality basketball player looks like and what traits to look for. Again, that feel and touch, like it very much persists today. It persists in a post Cerebro world, 110%. But the fallacy comes when we think that numbers are our enemy. And I think what you sometimes will see, calling out our own data community to an extent, sometimes what you're going to see are data specialists that have their proprietary formulas, their proprietary algorithms. They want to get the ear of in that analogy, you have Jonah Hill sitting on one side, Brad Pitt at the head of the table, and the scouts on the other, right? Like there's only one Brad Pitt, so you're trying to pull him your way, and that tug of war is where things have become problematic. But what I think our role is as data guys on our side, our job is to help empower those scouts. Again, they do have a good read on the touch and the feel of the game in a way that the numbers won't necessarily have, but we can help you shortlist. And so for us, making data not intentionally complicated to freeze them out, but intentionally simple. So every stakeholder, whether it is a coach, a player, a scout, a scouting service, someone in the media, a fan. Our goal is to make data simple so everyone can understand it and everyone can use it to better whatever it is they're working on in their specific role.
Tell me a little bit more about the product. I want to understand what it feels like, what it looks like,
Yeah.
and also what does a typical customer engagement look like for you guys?
Yeah. Well, from a product perspective, I don't know that it could get much simpler than what we do. Early on, we've at this point, obviously, we have had some success in fundraising, but early on, it was difficult trying to get the eye and the ear of investors. They didn't really understand how or why a product as simple as ours would be valuable. You're just doing box score data and basic biographical data. They would think, hey, on the players that matter, that exists, and on the players that don't don't matter, in other words, aren't consensus top players right now, it's just that they don't matter, right? So we kind of fought that battle for a long time. Had to stick to our guns there. But the product itself is like I said, it is strikingly simple. It's all the work that goes into getting us there, aggregating it, looking at it from a quality perspective. In some cases, going and collecting it, like I said, filling in some of those gaps. The player biographical data and the matching becomes really difficult at scale, even on some top players. But when you go in there into what we call a Cerebro scope currently, what you see is just the database, those core games, events or competitions, core objects, teams, players, biographical data, basic stats. You see all of that presented in a pretty tabular format right now. We always say there's kind of three core features. You can search a player by name. I can go look at a career resume on somebody I know I want to go look at. I can go to a competition. Let's say I want to go search the transfer portal right now, or hey, I missed this Nike YBL event or this local tournament, whatever it is. You can go kind of get a recap there. And then the third way, it's the best way in my opinion, is what we call our global search. So show me all the players domestically in the world that match a certain qualifier, right? And so ideally you're going to see names that you recognize, and then you're going to see some names that you don't. Those might be your value picks right there. And so those customer engagements, it's a perfect, really a perfect segue, because what I think we faced early on, we kind of faced growth, and then we faced a bit of a plateau. We were continuing to deepen our relationships, and teams that were using us were winning, which is to me, the ultimate measuring stick of whether something entrepreneurially is ever worth chasing. But how do you transition from that early adopter to that early majority. And that's kind of a difficult chasm to bridge. I don't think I'm the first one breaking this news. But for us, it was like, hey, you've semi created this category of longitudinal career data, at least in the minds of college coaches, any sort of application for them. But still, so what? We just talked about how in Moneyball, you had the naked eye versus the numbers, and if you're going to put the numbers in the hands of the naked eye decision makers, which many college coaches are, they don't have an analytics staff. You have to meet them where they are, and so our early adoption was absolutely through college coaches that knew how to traverse a spreadsheet and knew, they weren't intimidated by looking at one. But it gets difficult when they're juggling. You look at their calendars right now; it's unbelievable. They never stop. They're recruiting all the time. They're managing budgets. I mean, it's running a professional team without many of the professional resources at this point.
Yeah.
Is what it's a lot like. So yeah, what we've done is just roll up our sleeves and go meet those customers where they are. It doesn't make sense long term from a financial perspective to keep doing what we're doing, but hey, we'll help you build your big board. We'll help you build your short list. We'll run a player report or a team report for you. And so we're looking at that as kind of paid R&D, right? They're informing us of the features we need to pursue. We announced a partnership with Google on building a chatbot through Gemini. Um, and what features are most important to key in on for the roadmap there, as again you meet those customers where they are, and permit them to engage that data in a natural language and auto generate reports. So that's kind of what our engagements have looked like. It's been a lot of hand holding, but I think we're amassing a ton of value as we do it.
So at the bigger levels, collegiate, pro, are you selling to teams, ideally teams and leagues? And then when you go into youth with a much more fragmented situation, I would assume you're not selling to teams. It's more so probably league event operators, someone who can aggregate more bodies more consistently. How does that work?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Well, so we're looking at more in a phased approach because we actually believe we can sell to every stakeholder in the ecosystem. As I mentioned, all the way to players and to fans, like consumer audiences. Over the long run, we think are going to find some value in what we're doing. But originally, yeah, we were selling to teams. We were collecting youth data that then we turn around and provide back to those teams, but it's effectively a recruiting application originally. Now you start to go kind of back down to the youth levels, and you say, well, how can we add value here? We're increasingly providing more than just stats services to our event operator partners. They want to be able to provide reports to the teams that sign up to participate. Those are their customers, right? So provide back to the clubs. Hey, here's a snapshot of how you performed in this event. Pretty soon, we're going to allow them to see kind of their own careers, if you will, like event over event, competition over competition, season over season, almost like a franchise mode. Eventually, is where it could go for youth teams. But as mentioned, from a business perspective, our eye on the prize is players. You've got a $10 to $20 billion youth sports tourism industry just here domestically. Basketball is the largest share of that. Go back to that issue of players just it being impossible to evaluate every player everywhere perfectly objectively.
Yeah.
Well, now you transition that over to pain that paying customers are actively experiencing. Hey, my kid's better than that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. The data can tell us that. And guess what? If you're where you want to be, you can take this data and you can advocate for yourself to the college coaches that already respect this as a data source. Or if you're not where you want to be, fantastic. You can start to understand the delta between where you're at and where you want to be, and take that to your skill trainer and know where to get better. So we're excited about that market, and then kind of lastly getting to that consumer market. But that's kind of one side. We also have a data licensing side of the business too, where just B2B, full and direct data feeds, whether that's an NBA team that's building their own predictive model, or increasingly, it can be media outlets. One day, not of course on youth, but there's sports book applications for pro and collegiate data sets. So, a ton of different directions you can go. It means something to everyone. The question is, how do you go to market and how do you sequence that?
It's funny. I had Marcus Elliott on the podcast almost a year ago, last spring, who runs P3.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of.
I listened to that one. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite episodes for sure.
Marcus, if you're listening, we need to talk.
Yeah. I have to make a connection here. So what he said in that one, which is so funny, is he's like, I spent 20 years effectively being the mad scientist who no one wanted to listen to. And he was, he started earlier, so kind of almost exactly in line with that Moneyball era. And he said it was really amazing to see that tilt.
Yeah.
Calls it, I think he says about 8 years ago, things started to change where all of a sudden they're coming inbound, and now they wanted some of it, they wanted to better understand, and now they want everything.
Yeah.
And so I am a little bit curious. Obviously, times have changed. He started P3 in 2006. It's 2026 here. Still, though, you talked about the Excel literate coach being at least the first person to go for. How much education and like kind of, I don't want to say hand holding to sound pejorative, but really like hands-on education and providing a resource to these people. How much of that is what you guys do?
Right now, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And again, it's like I said. I mean, we look at it as paid R&D, right? Like, if we can make our data, we have to have respect for where the space stands today, which is generally not recognizing the problem and therefore not having a lot of respect or a need for the solution in their minds. They don't. Our education starts by educating them on the pain, right? Like, I'm the best recruiter there is. Hey, that's fantastic, right? Like, but to be the best among what is ultimately, like, you're being graded on curve because it's no disrespect. It is just impossible to go see all of the players everywhere and evaluate them perfectly objectively. College at the collegiate level, they have always needed projection models like an NBA team has had. They've just never had data to feed into it. And so I think, number one, helping them see the problem, which NILs really help to accelerate that. When you're spending real dollars, now there are real expectations.
Well, just to hop in there, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
Marcus also pointed out, he's like, you do tie it to supermax contracts.
100%.
And these players
100%.
now being $50 million a year. Oh, actually, I think in the case of player health and movement data, they're like, maybe we should take better care of our expensive assets.
It's funny, you'd go talk. I'm sure if you went and talk to a college coach 10 years ago, he'd say, man, we got to win. But you go talk to that same college coach now, he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I gotta win.
Urgency.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, when real dollars come on the table, all of a sudden it just makes it all the more serious of a matter. So that's definitely helped to accelerate the understanding. I mean, you see general managers being hired in college sports right now. That's our best friend. A lot of times these are, we've seen a few assistant general managers come down from the NBA and join college staffs. And they're like, what are we doing? Yeah, of course we have to have this data. Of course we're going to build predictive models and player evaluation models. How else could we possibly do this? But that's still not 100% of the way there. And it even goes beyond that. I think you'd be surprised at shoe brands, agencies,
insurance
companies, financial institutions, people that you would expect, that people that have been betting big on athletes for a long time. I think you'd be surprised how many just kind of jump behind the consensus. They trust what's happening on the floor. And again, nothing wrong with that. That is where that is where the game is being played. But we can provide edges today on who is going to be good in the future because we have more data to be able to project that trend. So seeing those fits take place in real time, even still, if we do need whatever we need to do to meet our customers where they are, we're happy to do. A couple of our basketball experts at this exact moment are on the road right now meeting with one of the big three agencies at this big three, big five, however you want to slice it, agencies right this moment to help them understand truly how to implement this data, not only in player pitches, but also in play actual representation, right? Like, walk in with data that can help you get that deal with that brand or with that team.
So many use cases. I think of this because you mentioned some of these assistant GMs or people going from professional assistant GM to GM of a collegiate team.
Yeah.
That's a move that would not have been on the table just, until very recently. And it made me think of what Cameron Korab, the Youth Sports Business Report founder, who was on the pod a couple weeks ago, he said, and this ties into my people moves thing that I track in the newsletter.
So smart.
He said, look at the human capital. You have people getting their MBA at Wharton and then taking over a youth sports operation because they know there's so much upside and like the market is just getting more and more sophisticated. And I think I'd be curious, have you seen similar stuff where you probably have? I mean, I think I saw one in my own data, people moves feature where somebody went from, I don't think it was Google, but it was a big Silicon Valley job to be the head of machine learning around automating the referees in the NBA probably 3 months ago.
Yep.
And so you see the level of sophistication
Absolutely.
and the talent flow tells you so much about where this is headed.
It does. It does. Yes. I was having lunch a couple of weeks ago with someone that's had a lot of success in the basketball industry, specifically multiple roles. Um, and he was speaking about a private equity group that is interested in doing another one of these youth sports roll ups and hiring him as their basketball expert. And I mean, we're talking about somebody that's held roles at the biggest institutions in our sport, in multiple of those roles. And like my immediate thought, and specific that is specifically a youth sports roll up, and my first thought was, of course, right? Like that makes all the sense.
Yeah.
As the dollars are flowing, so will so do the stakes, and so will the talent, right?
There are a couple of acronyms that I was unfamiliar with before digging
Yes.
into a little bit of research on you and Cerebro. Some key formulas and things that you use as indicators for players. Let's take one as an example. What is CRAM?
That is the contextual RAM. So the next question is, what is the RAM? The RAM is the recruiting analytics metric. So we created this suite of 7 metrics for really one primary reason: to take data that college coaches would argue about. They would say, hey, I think a foul rate is the most important thing. I think assist to turnover ratio is the most important thing. They can't effectively source a short list if they don't agree on what matters. So what they needed kind of was like a naked eye proxy. It's not as good as naked eye, but it's as close as we can get with a box score, and helps you cut through your list of 1 million down to a handful. And so these 7 metrics, 2 tell you how good a player was overall in a given competition. That's the RAM and the CRAM. And then 5 are skill scores. They tell you what it was a player was good at. So the recruiting analytics metric, or the RAM, that's like an absolute skill score. How good was this player in this event? If it's the kindergarten league, it's on a scale of 0 to 1,000. You can break the scale if it's a super exceptional performance. But if it's the kindergarten league, our average RAM might be a 300, and if it's the NBA, might be a 800, right? The CRAM comes in to help you contextualize that better, so you can understand how good was this player relative to this competition. Think along the lines of a standard deviation. Okay, roughly the top 30% of a given competition medals. We do gold, silver, bronze. About the top 2% is gold. And so these are super elite performances. And now as you're working your way through a global search, and I see, I run a search for X, Y, or Z, and I see this player match this qualifier 5 times. I could see he was a bronze medalist, 2 silvers, 1 gold, and did not medal 1 time. And then again, I can kind of cruise over. Usually the skill scores would be what correlates here, but you could cruise over and kind of see what it was specifically they were good at using those 5 skill scores. But to me, the place that rubber kind of meets the road on this is the skill scores turn into archetypes. So oftentimes in basketball, we'll talk about a 3-and-D archetype, or a connector, or a modern big. And different thresholds of the skill scores equate to hitting certain Cerebro archetypes. So if you are a college coach, although these are new metrics you have to learn, you can really boil it down. The cheat code is boil it down to gold, silver, bronze. Look at a competition. See, do I respect this event? If I do, okay. Oh wow, he was gold. Okay, he met this archetype. Again, a modern big here. Cool. That's what I'm looking for, right? Put him on the short list. So that's that's the extent to which we get nerdy. Again, our job is to try to bridge that gap between those two sides of the Moneyball table, and this is our way of doing it.
It's so important though, because I mean, basketball might actually be the most extreme sport. I'm come from a football background, but you think about the disparities in high school football.
Yeah.
And the gaps. Like,
yeah.
I think of the Trinity League in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
It is a D1 factory.
Yep.
Mater Dei and
Yep.
Servite and all these huge football powerhouses. Those guys on that field compared to, the tiny private school league down the road, it's just you cannot possibly evaluate that thinking you're in the same universe. And there are good players on both of those teams.
Sure,
Of course there are the big teams, but it's funny. I just I'm reading this book, Meat Market.
Yeah.
A classic college football recruiting book.
Yeah.
Came out in like 2007, 2008, and it really follows around Ed Ogeron, mostly when he was at Ole Miss. And one of the chapters I just read he's talking about how his team had never seen such domination and such physical presence by this one player. And, they said he did play at a small school, but still.
Yeah.
And then they get him to Oxford.
Yep.
And he just couldn't hang
Yeah.
at all. And
Yeah.
so it's like, yeah, his statistics were unbelievable.
Yep.
His film was insane. He's running people over. But until you have that context,
100%. 100%. And I mean, our view is, that number one, that can absolutely happen. And it will happen. I think there are a couple of things we could do. I think first, with projection models, often what you're going to be doing is looking back over a history and seeing how and if these things have ever translated, and it can give you some degree of confidence. However, you might have these, two really polarized environments, a high level and extremely low level, and the low level is giving you some high output. At the end of the day, putting someone on a short list so that you can get them in front of you, put them in that. AAU does a great job in basketball of helping to kind of bring those worlds together. But actually making schedules. I mean, I think you mentioned there's an upcoming podcast with Fast Break AI.
Yep.
And so actually making good schedules, super, super valuable, right? Like, let's get the right matchups on the court so we can actually evaluate these guys. That's really our job is, hey, here's a flag. It might be worth you looking at. Okay, I look at it, dismiss it, accept it. That remains up to you.
How much I would think if I was putting myself in your shoes, that you will hopefully have some champions within these teams. So you think about it, it's like if all of a sudden word gets out that there's one high school team or even a college team that is leveraging a proprietary data set that other groups are not,
Yep.
You can imagine the kind of the way things might snowball, and all of a sudden you might be across an entire conference or league.
We like to say competitive advantages become competitive requirements. That's the reason why, in addition to feature guidance on, like I said, paid R&D, digging in with our customers and helping them ultimately helping them win. It helps with feature guidance, but the other thing it does is meeting them where they're at and investing in them. It helps to make this category useful. Creating sort of this category of longitudinal data. It becomes valuable when it transitions from a competitive advantage to a competitive requirement. So we have beneath the surface a lot of really cool proofs of concept teams that have identified, conference players of the year using our data, agencies that have found players first using our data, national teams that have identified players, big studies that have been done by really large institutions that indicate the data has made their models more predictive than they've ever been. All of that is really good information that now we are, just really as of this year, beginning to kind of turn the marketing microphone on and actually say, hey, you're you might be a little behind of where some of your competition is. And that, as a business, that's how you help drive that competitive advantage into that competitive requirement ultimately.
All right, and I got to give you some props. We were just talking off camera here. You guys just had your first 7-figure agreement, that $1 million contracts. Tell me about that.
Definitely a big moment for us. Data companies in general are hard to start. They require a ton of capital up front. But once you're able to kind of turn that corner, they can really turn into more of a money printing operation, which is much better. I think this is pretty symbolic. Alongside of we were able to actually get a study done by the NBA league office back in the fall. It found our data to be the most predictive of future rookie performance that they had ever seen and run through their models. That was a big moment, and it kind of is where this corner turned. Between that and having built this reputation for quality data at scale, it's kind of opened up this opportunity for, again, this first 7-figure deal for us that pushes us towards the right side of profitability. Ultimately, hopefully ending not only the cash burn by the end of this year, but getting us there on the right side and moving us more towards a growth phase.
Would that growth phase come in the form of another venture raise, or are you trying to make this thing come on its own?
That's a very good question, and a current topic of debate. We're probably raising one more round just before we get on the other side of profitability, but once we're there, that is an open issue. I think a growth round like that would probably be applied towards either expansion into a second sport or potentially some international expansion as well. But more to come on that.
Very cool. I've been told that data companies have pretty decent margins once you get that thing going.
Once you get there, so we're finally there.
Tell me about your co-founders.
My co-founders are great. I have 2 of them. I have my one co-founder, Ed Chow. He heads up our operation, has a background across numerous different types of businesses. My other co-founder, John Cho, he serves as our head of data. His role is actually making the database happen. He spent almost 2 decades with the Houston Rockets. While he was there, he learned under some of the greats, Daryl Morey included, what quality data looks like. Learned what the grind of the NBA looks like. He was on the second row of the bench for I want to say like the last 5 years or so that he was there. So he was doing everything from assisting with replay during the games themselves, all the way to assisting coaches with their scouts, assisting the player development coaches. Basically, it meant, hey, we need you on the bench for the game. We need you at every practice, and in between, you need to be getting ready for the next one of whatever the next event is. And by the way, you got to fly to the next city tonight. There was no time off. So honestly, trying to convince him right now that 6 hours of sleep is requisite is a uphill battle.
I mean, that makes me think of, I remember thinking this when I was watching a season of Hard Knocks years ago. I was like looking at these guys grinding film in the middle of the night with
Yeah.
their, stack of dip and giant cup of coffee and fast food. And I'm like, I think professional, in this case,
Yeah.
professional coaches might be among like the least healthy people in America.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The paradox is just insane, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we have these specimens on the court, and now coaching them is the exact opposite. I mean, I will never forget how hypocritical I thought it was when I was in like I was in like first or second grade, but the varsity baseball coach came down, and he would coach our PE class. He always made us run, but he had a big dip in, was drinking a Dr. Pepper. I was like, you're going to tell me to run. And I see you over there. I could never get my head around it. But hopefully these professional athletes get it a little bit more than I did.
Yeah. The average scout is not a biohacker. That's
No,
for sure.
no.
On that note, what is something that you've seen maybe, firsthand that still goes on to this day in the world of scouting and recruiting that you hope anyway, 5, 10 years from now, even you'll look back and think that was the Stone Ages. What was going on there?
Ooh, it's a good one, Brent. I don't think I've been asked this one before. Um, I would say probably the way that everybody congregates around consensus.
Mm.
And I think people are scared. We internally, I think it's actually a phrase used across the industry, but we always say, who's recruiting him? And honestly, that means you're late. It's the same way in business, right? Like if you're just another if you're just another one of the people in line for this guy, you're late. And you better be Nike, you better be UCLA, you better be the biggest and the best because you weren't the first. At least there's a chance if you're the first, the guy's going to remember that, right? And I think that just this huddling around consensus, I think that there's a fear. Wouldn't call out any one particular rankings group, but like within the rankings, oh, he's got him 13th. I'll have him, plus or minus 3 of that, right? Like, one guy's got him 16th, one guy's got him 10th, one guy's got him 13th, right? Like, hang on, could we just zoom out and like evaluate this as objectively as possible? Could we all evaluate everything that we see as objectively as possible? I mean, obviously we have the opportunity to make a business out of helping people do that, but I would love to see us be more helpful in helping you to see what your eyes just don't have time to see. And I would love to see everybody go ahead and embrace not worrying about I remember in school, like, don't worry about what your neighbor is doing, right? Like, just focus on what you're doing right here.
Yeah.
Go evaluate the guy and have your own opinion, and let it be exactly that.
Yeah. Three things come to mind there. One, on the consensus front, I remember so well being in high school trying to get recruited, and you'd see quarterback from Southern California, no offers, no offers, no offers, no offers. Bang. Somebody takes the first.
Who's recruiting him?
Someone makes the first bet. The kid smartly tweets it out. I'm so thankful to have gotten my first offer from blank. And every day for the next 10 days, he's announcing new offers.
The thing I think too, literally, I know that my wife gets on to me all the time about this, but I'm like, my brain just can't get around it. It's that statement is effectively telling my literal mind that he got that much better in 10 days. And I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
well, we all know that that's a farce. So how stupid is this?
Yeah. Well,
That's what my brain thinks.
and I was saying there are three things. That was one. The second one is, and it's still true to this day, it is also, just to zoom out and take a realistic look at this, it's unbelievable how much power the Rivals 24/7, Scout.com, these platforms, particularly
Yeah,
when there was less information flow and less transparency, where it wasn't, like, it was just taken as the cold hard truth. Like,
totally.
that was it.
To-
And the amount of implications that came from what those publications said for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives, is just crazy. I have no real like take on it. It's just a wild reality. The third thing is what you said about the way they do these evaluations. Even if you look at the ESPN recruiting page, what's his 40 time? Again, I very much have a football lens, but 40 time. I mean, some of these sites, how many reps on 185 bench if you're a high school kid, maybe 225.
Yep.
What was your standing broad jump?
Yep.
What's your height and weight?
Yep. Yep.
Like that is literally like the set of inputs you would give to a, seventh grader intro to statistics thing.
Yeah.
And that's determining
Yeah. Yeah.
lives, like
Yeah.
literally where these
I,
people's
I
trajectories of their lives are going.
again, from a business perspective, I feel great about what we do because from an altruistic perspective, I think we have an opportunity to change lives for those that earn it and deserve it, and bringing meritocracy.
Yeah.
I'll never apologize for that. I'm excited about that. But you start to think about the actual toll on, we call them end users, because my belief is, if you, in business in general, if you serve end users better, you will win. Uber served end users better than taxi cabs did. It was what it was, right? In our case, end users, we look at them primarily as twofold: players and coaches, and or recruiters, and that application or use case of our business. And to your point, like the human toll of, I have invested so much of my time, so much of my childhood, my developmental time,
Mhm.
so much of my parents' money,
Yep.
and I've been chasing this dream with no clarity on what the recruiting side actually thinks, but for a select group of people in the middle who get to be the arbiter.
Yep.
And that comes without me ever feeling like I get a fair shake.
Right.
And I think that there is a tremendous business opportunity in setting and level setting across all three of those groups. Because again, we agree, the scouts absolutely have a place. This is not an anti-scout message whatsoever. But base it all in actual merit and performance,
Yeah.
and allow all three parties to see the same picture. I think it's revolutionary. But I'm talking my own book, so
Yeah. Well, that kind of tees up this next question, some of the talk of kind of the mission here. We heard about your co-founders. Why are you doing this? You talked about being a Mavs ball boy, and when I walked into this amazing home court, you were shooting jumpers. Like, I know you love the sport, of
yeah,
course. But why are you doing this?
I do. Yeah, I love the game. As a ball boy, when I was growing up, I just remember thinking, man, there's for me, I remember looking around, looking at the rafters, seeing all the cameras, and like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make any form of an impact in this world. The odds of me turning this into a career, I know I'm not going to be playing probably. Coaching super competitive. Like, what am I going to do here? There's no innovation left. That's what I thought at the time.
A classic thought.
Classic. But um, I go on a journey. Kind of, I find out, um, ultimately find out I was wrong about that. I started doing adult recreational basketball. I was running a driveway basketball league when I was 13 years old. I ran it throughout the time I was in high school. Ended up turning it into a business when I went to college. I sold that business. Went to work for the guy that hired me out of Chicago, running adult rec leagues all over the country. And that's really where I recalled in my mid 20s. I recalled, man, it would make a lot of sense because players are self-reporting how good they are. It'd make a lot of sense if we just use stats to actually help track how good they are. So created this scorekeeping app. I was running a pilot down at a multi-court facility in Dallas. I meet this NCAA certified scout who's like, "Why are you wasting your time on these adult recreational players? You should be doing this on, at the high school level, the elite high school level. And that was where I had that flashback to can't make a difference at the elite level. And I realized, wait, they don't have box, sure, they've got box scores at the college level at the NBA, but 1 to 2 years before, they actually don't have any reliable data. But then they say that they build draft projection models off of that data. Like, that's an opportunity. So hit the road, ended up going across the country, statting a lot of these events. Stat one Jaden Hardy game that ended up being pretty important. And COVID hits. Live events go on pause. Realize, man, there's a lot of collectors out there, but there's nobody that's aggregating it in a way that actually makes it useful. And start aggregating during the pandemic. Realize, well, there's still a lot of gaps. Our goal then becomes, and now is, let's form partnerships with everybody that's out there collecting data. We'll aggregate it all to one spot. We'll feed them traffic back if most of them are video plays. So we'll feed traffic back to you if you're someone like a Huddle or a Synergy or someone like that. To go watch the film, so you still have subscribers. Again, nobody really thinks box score data is that valuable, but we'll bring it all into one spot, and collectively, it does become valuable. And yeah, we kind of build a business from there. But like I said, I mean, my why outside of it's evolved over time. It started for sure as I just love to find a gig in basketball, but it has absolutely turned into learning the pain of these users and wanting to play some small role in helping manifest a better reality for all of them. I mean, it's a global game, and we think we can affect every stakeholder. Again, from fans to teams, to agents to brands to financial institutions.
Well, I thought that was going to be my closing question, but I got to poke on one of those things you said a little bit
Yeah.
further. Tell me about running adult rec leagues and what you learned from that.
Yeah. I learned a lot. That's for sure. Um, I learned the pain of of the self matching, as I had mentioned. But I think the thing I learned more than anything is our competitive fire as athletes. Again, I was a basketball player, obviously, growing up. It evolves, but it gets a little quieter, right? Like, nobody wants you to know that they're going really hard in one of these games. But at the end of the day, like, we're out there, everybody says, "Hey, I'm just here to get a little cardio."
Yeah.
Okay, but you do want to win.
Yeah.
Um,
Diving for loose balls.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go play up at my church a little bit later. I'm gonna pretend like I don't care, but I definitely do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why they keep spending money. It's why there's an industry in the first place. You can get cardio on a treadmill.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Ryan, thanks so much. Where can people find you? Who should reach out to you? Do a little plug for Cerebro here.
Awesome. Yeah, cerebrosports.com is always a safe spot to start. We're interested in meeting anyone and everyone. Obviously, anyone on the team side, we'd be excited to speak with. We're always trying to deepen our Rolodex over on the investment side, the business side in general. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty open. If you are into basketball, I definitely think our Twitter feed or X feed is a pretty good follow at Cerebro Sports. And yeah, of course, hit me up on LinkedIn. But yeah, really appreciate you having me, Brent.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thanks.